first of all, it was a wonderful idea to have everybody introduce themselves, and because the group here is so esteemed and so diverse in terms of interests. So the question is, what can I add to the group here? And I think Guangzhong asked me to perhaps share a little bit of my personal story along the way, because I think there is an element of translational research in that. And I think all of you are here at Imperial because, lots of times it really, no matter how big the company is, it's a matter of collaborating with the right academic skills and interests which actually make something successful. So I'm going to share a little bit on that side. The other area which I will share a little bit about is robotics, but I heard many of the introductions that people are interested, in manufacturing robots, industrial 4.0, which actually isn't even a term I'm familiar with until tonight. But I'm going to try to put a little bit of a wrapper on robotics in general. And the third thing, which even though your specific businesses may not be directly focused in a business, it's of high importance to all of us, both on an individual as well as on a company level, and that's healthcare. And so that is something I know something about, and so hopefully the comments on that front everyone will be able to relate to. So if you start with just the broad idea of robotics, so I was in graduate school in the mid-'80s. And if you remember the mid-'80s, I think the IBM PC was introduced in 1981. And so I'm in graduate school in the mid-'80s. What's the next best big thing? I picked robotics because I said, well, computers, it had already hit the hockey stick. And then I was thinking, wow, the next thing is going to be robotics. And so I've been in the robotics field since the mid-'80s. And here we are 30 years later. And, robots have certainly had plenty of successes, but no way, shape, or form has it had the success of like computers, right? And I think the reason is because, computers can have a common platform in a common package in the I/Os with a keyboard and a screen or what have you. Where robots, by definition, interact with the physical world. And if you interact with the physical world, there are so many different things that are done that I think that's one of the things which has prevented robotics in general to go like this, following computers going like this. Having said that, it is a very exciting time for robots in general, okay? So I've focused more, and I think more about robots as they are intersecting with everyday life. And there's plenty of things which are happening outside of that. For example, I think several of you mentioned the concept of manufacturing. And I think there's some interesting things going on in manufacturing robots today, making them low cost, reprogrammable, to be able to use for small scale manufacturing. This is actually started by a former MIT professor who actually is wanting to be able to sell manufacturing capabilities to small and medium-sized companies, which is typically outside the range of robotics, because those are manufacturing robots are used more for big companies. The other areas which are getting a lot of excitement, so this is just there's a little robot under here which is pulling a cart around, and whether that's done in a manufacturing plant or in a hospital, the kind of the transportation of a robot is, I think, an area which is going to continue to move forward. Home-based robots, most of you probably recognize this as a Roomba, which is automatic vacuuming. This is obviously going to be, this concept is going to be transformational. Driverless cars, right? And that's, in the States, several states have actually passed the laws where driverless cars are now possible. I guess the new Tesla has got driverless capabilities. That's going to be very interesting. This drone capability, Amazon's been getting a lot of attention with regards to be able to deliver packages by drone. It's going to come and land on your front door, and whether you think that's going to happen or not, I don't know, but it certainly is very interesting, and a lot of energy is being applied that way. And the two areas which I know a little bit about is on the surgical side and on this concept which we call remote presence, which is what I'll talk about here. I got into this field of healthcare and medicine right here. It was a fortuitous event. This graph is showing the conversion of a procedure. It's called cholecystectomy, which is taking out the gallbladder. This line indicates the open incision, the big incision gallbladder removal. This line is the minimally invasive or keyhole gallbladder removal. And you can see once it was created, the procedure that is, it took off. This is in healthcare, this is a very fast transition where over maybe a 5-6 year period of time, the procedure changed dramatically, and it really showed the power of patient influence. This is a patient-driven phenomena, and many surgeons went very unwillingly to this new procedure because, in a sense, the surgery became friendlier for the patient because of the pain and recovery time, and it became harder for the surgeon. So I got into this area of robotics in surgery, as Guangzheng was mentioning, because I was looking for applications here, and the surgeons started telling me that, hey, it's great for the patient, hard on me. Well, why is it hard on you? Well, one reason is because I've lost control of my eyes. Someone else is holding this camera, and although I want to look left, the person holding the camera is looking right or falling asleep or what have you, and that does happen. Because those of us who are not in operating rooms all the time, you say a guy's falling asleep holding a camera and a patient. Well, if you do it every day, you do actually. And so what we did was we came up with this concept, which is to build a third arm for the patient, for the surgeon, and put it under direct control of that surgeon. And we built this system. It was called Aesops, stand for Automated Endoscopic System for Optimal Positioning. And one of the things which happened during this time, which is to my point of translational research, I finished my PhD in '88, and I was teaching and getting going in this new venture. And the university, first of all, was very generous to me, allowing me to use university space to kind of get going. And then my first monies that came in were from NASA. And NASA actually gave me some grants, which actually allowed me to work on this. And actually, after it became successful, they put it on the cover of the NASA Tech Briefs. And so the point is, so if you go back to this time, and you say you want to use robots for surgery, people looked at you like you were nuts, okay? Because it was like a robot holding an instrument in a person, when in fact, organizations like the university and NASA were the ones which allowed me to move forward on this. So then the next phase was, okay, this phase again was talking about abdominal surgery. Called laparoscopy. So, as all new companies, or not even new companies, are looking for the next big thing, okay, sorry. The next big thing after this part of the body was conquered was this guy up here. And the big procedure in here was heart bypass surgery. In fact, both my company, Computer Motion, and Intuitive Surgical, with the Vinci, the first targeted application was heart bypass surgery. Coronary artery bypass grafting was the name of the term. And the problem, what was thought to be the bottleneck to enabling it to go minimally invasive, was the sewing of a coronary artery. Coronary artery is about 1 millimeter in diameter, and you're sewing a graft, a bypass graft, onto it, which is another millimeter artery. So you're trying to sew 2 millimeter arteries together, running maybe about 8 to 10 stitches through it on a beating heart, and doing it with the chest closed. Okay, so as it turned out, we proved pretty quickly that if you computerized a surgical instrument, you can actually do that. Because as we know, robots can be very precise. We saw that today. And you can scale down motion. So you can actually have a surgeon throwing motions like this, and you can scale it down to a millimeter motion of equivalent proportions. And so we actually were able to show that you could do that, and we went hog wild. The company went public, and we're working hard to do this minimally invasive coronary artery bypass graft. Intuitive was doing the same. But it turned out that if you can just sew a coronary to a coronary, that wasn't the only limitation. Okay? It turned out there's a lot more to it because there's not a lot of room in there. There's actually, getting to the backside of the heart is a very difficult approach. And all of these things, which made that very difficult. But fortunately, during this time, some innovative surgeons out of France used this on the prostate. Okay, and the prostate, which is down lower in the pelvic area, it was very hard to do laparoscopically, but with the computerized surgical instruments, you could do it, and therefore, there became the industry of the surgical robots. My company, Computer Motion, ended up in a pretty significant intellectual property battle with Intuitive Surgical, and while all this was going on, the two companies actually ended up merging. Yeah, so it was quite a time. This was the system that we had developed, which was called Zeus. This is the system, the Da Vinci that you saw today. When the companies merged, they actually used some of the technology in the Zeus and put it into the Da Vinci. But as Guangzhang mentioned, I'm a pilgrim of the pilgrimage, or I don't know what the right terminology is. My fourth Hamlin Symposium, because I think that the work that's going on, that Guangzhang and team are able to pull together this conference, is really well done. And so it's a really opportune time for me, because I live in California. It's a bit of a trek, and it's an opportune time for me to really kind of see what's going on around the world in a very short period of time. And what's so exciting, so after the Computer Motion Intuitive merger happened, they have enjoyed about a 12-year monopoly, is really where it's at today. So that happened in 2002. Today we're 2015. They're still the only player out there. And the patents are running off. And they've got a many hundreds of millions of dollar lead in terms of the technology, et cetera. But since the market is established, there's a lot of very innovative work going on, which was actually being shown over the last couple of days here, which I think is going to bode well to the future of surgical robots, where all kinds of new inventions are going to be created. This was a rendering that actually I had made back in 2002 or 2001, where, but the only point of this slide is that it's going to evolve and it's going to get better. And one of the improvement of manipulators, the inclusion of informatics, all of these things are going to happen, which are going to be very, very exciting. Now, as Guangzhang mentioned, it was actually on September 7th, 2001, we did this surgery. It was called the Lindbergh procedure. And as was mentioned, really what happened was Professor Jacques Maresco, he somehow always knows the president of France. And at that time, it was President Chirac. He called President Chirac because he wanted to do this. President Chirac called the president of France Telecom to supply the ATM line at the time, and he did. And then we had to go up all the way to the commissioner of the FDA to get approval to do this procedure. So I'm going to play a quick 3-minute video here. That's Professor Jacques Moresco.
Moving, stop. Okay, it's perfect.
Modern medicine just took a giant step forward in making everyday surgery accessible to patients anywhere in the world. Doctors in New York City recently completed the first ever successful, completely remote surgery on a patient in France. The doctors, using medical robots and current fiber optic technology, opened up a new chapter in the history of surgery called telesurgery. In 1999, Professor Jacques Moresco had a vision that telesurgery was not only possible, but a necessary next step in the evolution of medicine.
It was impossible to imagine 10 years ago, or perhaps, yes, a little less, that this kind of operation from New York to Strasbourg would be possible. That's the reason why the name is Lindbergh operation, because I think it's going to be for surgery a very, very big symbol.
We are doing it at a distance. This patient is cured, and yet is several thousand miles away. It's fantastic.
To make the procedure work, Professor Moresco asked Computer Motion of Santa Barbara, California to supply a medical robot, and France Telecom to provide the high-speed transatlantic fiber optic link. At that point, Operation Lindbergh became a reality.
Robots combined with telecommunications can allow a remote surgeon to interact collaboratively
I've gotten older.
patient where that surgeon doesn't even exist. It can be thousands of miles away, as shown here.
Tu n'appuies pas sur le truc ou pas?
The patient is a 68-year-old woman from Strasbourg, France, who suffered from a diseased gallbladder. She jumped at the opportunity to be the first person to receive this pioneering surgery. The combination of advanced technology and telecommunications virtually eliminated the 4,000 miles separating the patient from her surgeons.
The quality of the picture is better than the majority of the picture of surgeons in general in the world.
In little more than a decade, surgery has changed to adopt new techniques that reduce the pain and trauma of open procedures to the common use of minimally invasive techniques and the latest advanced robotic-assisted telesurgery. The gallbladder surgery took Professor Moresco less than an hour to complete, and that resulted in a quick and full recovery.
It was just like a ballet.
So,
About 4 movements in the operation, and it finished great. It's a great moment in history.
so that was, as I mentioned, so the surgical robots were first invented for dexterity, improved dexterity. And then this experience, I was fortunate enough to be part of that experience in 2001. My company merged with Intuitive Surgical in 2002, so now I'm stuck with nothing to do with a clean slate of paper. So I'd been running in and out of hospitals for a dozen years now and trying to understand what's going on in healthcare. And those of you who aren't in healthcare might not know that there's kind of an equivalent to Moore's Law going on in healthcare. The equivalent is in the last 150 years, life expectancy has been going up about a year for every 5 calendar years. And it starts really just in like the 20th century or so, or beginning of the 20th century or late 19th century, where boom, for thousands of years, life expectancy being in the 30s. I think we'd all be gone, okay? But because of this, we're living longer and happier lives, but it's coming at a cost, right? So why is that happening? Here's another graph worth knowing. In 1970, there were about 20 physician specialties or medical specialties. Today, there's about 150. In 1970, there were about 200,000 journal papers published a year. Today, there's about 800,000 journal papers published a year in medicine. And so you can just do the math. You got the same number of providers split across this many more specialties. It becomes a very difficult problem to figure out how to treat everybody with the right with the right expertise. This is huge in the U.S., less problematic here. We're at about 17% of the GDP is the cost of healthcare. I think you guys here are at about 8.5%, 9%, but still not small. And the problem, though, is that the curve, because of that first curve of the aging population, that cost is only going to go up. And so how do you provide high-quality care to everybody at a lower cost? And one of the things we're working on now, this is what my company today does, InTouch Health, is if the caregiver is a physician, okay, if you got to start with that assumption, as opposed to it being automated. If the caregiver is a physician, first of all, lots of energy is going into this area of informatics, equipping that physician with the best information possible. But what if that physician, instead of only being able to take care of the patients in around him or her, he could take care of patients wherever they are? And that's really what we're working on here. And we've all seen Star Trek, of being able to beam somewhere else to take care of someone. Why does a physician only take care of patients around them? Because they can only be in one place at a time. And I'm going to go ahead and start an application which is running on my computer, but it could be on a tablet or an iPhone. And I'm going to log in to the internet. If you remember that Lindbergh procedure, it used this special ATM line. But the internet now, over all these years, has become so powerful that, that it can handle this kind of remote presence application in anywhere in the world, okay? So now I am beamed into, this is actually it's my temporary office in Santa Barbara because we've got some construction going on. And I'm actually now there as a robot. I'm there as a robot avatar, if you will. So I've just told my robot to go ahead and go to the mirror so you guys can look at it. So this is happening in Santa Barbara, California. Okay, so here, I just told it to go look at myself in the mirror, and here I am. Okay, that's me, and I'm about a 5.5 foot tall robot. And you can see how I can look around. Okay, I can actually, oh, look, there's kind of a patient over here. Okay, so I can go ahead and zoom in on that patient, and I can, like, in fact, even just send the robot right over to the side of the patient. It has an autonomous navigation capability, so I just told it to go there. I pointed on the ground where to go, and it went ahead and headed over there, and now this patient, she looks the same, okay, at all times. And so you can see how I can actually zoom in on her eyeball.
Is that reacting on your voice or on your mouse click?
It's reacting on my mouse click. And so if you look at, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to send it to a specific location. I'm going to send it to our makeshift ED. So I'm going to take the mouse click, and I'm just going to click it there. And now it's using an algorithm called SLAM, Simultaneous Localization and Mapping Algorithm, where now it is driving itself over to the ED. And we have these things, we're in about 1,200 hospitals now, and they can drive around amongst people, and it automatically avoids them. And so here I am now beamed in to a patient, and I can look at, say, the vital signs there. I can examine the patient, and you can see how I can kind of go ahead and zoom in on the patient. I can look at images. If it, most imagery today is electronic in developed countries, but in developing countries, you still have a lot of X-ray kind of imagery, and sometimes PAC systems, which is the electronic form, do not go back and forth. So I'll send it over to a different patient. Here you can see is an ICU. So the whole idea is that if I'm a physician here, I can actually, oh, there's someone there. Hey, is that honey? Is that you?
That's me. Can you hear me?
Hi there. So she works with me. So what time is it there?
It is almost 1 p.m.
Okay, so where are you, honey? Just so that you can tell the audience here. Just-
I'm in Santa Barbara, California.
okay, so you can see actually how I can actually zoom in very well on her as well. In fact, one of our key applications is stroke, okay, where we actually need to look at pupillary response. We'll do about 75,000 strokes this year, and and then in the robot there are things like stethoscopes. You can plug in ultrasound. You can do all these things to allow me, the physician here, to get as much information as possible so that I can render opinion. So it doesn't do surgery remotely. It's basically transporting the brain, if you will, of the physician to this other location in order to take care of the patients. Because the specialists, these 150 different types, what's really different is what they have up here. When I'm done, I'll see you later, honey.
All right, take care.
So I just sent it back to the doc. I can go ahead and hit a disconnect. It will continue by itself back there, and then I can go ahead and go on to somewhere else. This is an interesting one here, just worth pointing out. This one's in my mother's house because she's doing well, but she had chemo last year, and I was visiting her every day in her house up in the Silicon Valley area. So just to end on that, I think that the idea of robotics has really come of age where there can really be a lot of exciting things happening in this field. I think that it's really going to it's complex stuff. So it's really going to take a lot of collaboration with the academic organizations, the governments, and the companies in order to make these things happen. Thank you very much.